Hello and welcome to 1 Minute History, where I read from my book, A Bible Believer Looks at World History, that I wrote for homeschoolers to teach homeschoolers about world history. We're still in Genesis in the very beginnings, and we're using the King James Bible. And I'll talk about today about after the flood. So in Genesis 9, now you can get my book, by the way, if you're interested, on lulu.com, amazon.com, or at the Bible Baptist bookstore. So in Genesis 9:1, Noah and his family leave the ark. They are commanded to multiply and replenish the earth. They are told that animals will now be afraid of them, implying that before the flood, animals coexisted peaceably with mankind. They are told that they can now eat animals, implying, in confirmation of earlier scriptures, that the pre flood man was a vegetarian. The first proscription is given against eating blood, a rule given here before the law, given in during the law in Leviticus 3:17, and after the law in Acts 15:20 and 29. They are then given a statement about justice with regard to killing each other. Notice the contrast between Cain's punishment, Lamech's proud pronouncement, and the new standard of justice prescribed here by God. So read the first few chapters of Genesis. God then makes a covenant with Noah and all creation, a dispensation, and promises that this worldwide flood, will not be repeated again. Verse 19 of chapter 9 states clearly that the three sons of Noah are the progenitors of the entire human race. And Noah, so Noah goes on. Adam's role as a husbandman, Noah takes up Adam's role as a husbandman, taking care of a vineyard, which will have prophetic implications in Isaiah with regard to Israel. But Noah gets drunk. Ham humiliates him, and this results in his son Canaan being cursed, perhaps because Ham had already been blessed in verse 1 of chapter 9. Canaan is the father of the later inhabitants of Palestine, listed in chapter 10, verses 15 to 20, whose religious practices mirrored that of the rest of the depraved cultures of the ancient Near East, and even magnified the bestiality, incest, temple prostitution, and murder of their religions, which God hated so intensely. Canaan, in Ham's place, is cursed to be a servant of servants. This comes true when the Hebrews, former servants of Egypt, become masters of the survivors of Israel's conquest of Palestine. Shem, the ancestor of the Jews, is upheld coming up to become Canaan's master. Now, there was a racist, hateful, and non-scriptural theory in the 1800s that is unfortunately still with many fundamentalists, that Ham was black, and he was the father of all Africans, and that the descendants of Ham were condemned to be slaves, which is total BS. It doesn't say that. There's no races here. And what kind of a moron thinks that Noah got off the ark with a white kid, a black kid, and a brown kid, an Asian kid, or whatever? I mean, come on, it doesn't even say that. There isn't even races mentioned yet. In fact, genetics teaches us that the white race, blue eyes and things like that, were mutations about 6,000 years ago, putting it in the general time frame of the Tower of Babel and all these events. But at this point in time, there are people, genetics teaches us that the first European inhabitants were brown skinned and brown hair and brown eyes, much like most of the world is today. So that whole thing about Ham's curse and all that and Ham's not only the progenitor of maybe the North African races for sure, but Sumeria through Nimrod. I mean, come on. So beware of preachers who preach racism and twist the Bible to use it to justify their false beliefs. In any event, we're going to talk about the Table of Nations next, which is, something that was basically invented in the 1800s. And, we're going to talk about it. It's really tough to determine who comes from what. So because of intermarriage and conquests and movements and immigrations, all that stuff. So anyway, thank you. I enjoyed this. I hope you did too. Study more. If you don't agree with what I say, that's fine. But study, study, study.